If you've been reading LitRPG for really any period of time, then you're probably familiar with the humble tier list. If you've been on places like Reddit or Facebook or on forums, places like Royal Road, you have definitely seen people putting together those little covers and putting them on the rankings. Is it S tier? Is it B tier? And giving their thoughts on how they think these different books stack up. But what if there was a way to take, I don't know, 100 tier lists that have come out in the last year over on the LitRPG subreddit and smush them together so that you could get the average, so that you could see what people actually thought spread out across a large number of these lists? Well, I would tell you that happened. Somebody did that. Jacmusl over, I'm saying that right, who knows? Jacmusl, we're going to go with that. Over on Reddit, put together 100 tier lists, 653 series, and took the averages, did some math, did some stats behind the scenes, and has given us, at least right now in 2025, what I'm going to call the ultimate tier list, because it is really putting together folks who are deep in the space. I'm on the LitRPG subreddit every day, and these are folks who are true, I don't want to say connoisseurs, but they're at least people who care deeply about the series that they are reading. And I have to say, there are some surprises on this ultimate tier list, especially when you think about series that are absolutely popular. So I'm going to go break it down. I got permission. Jack was very keen. He's like, yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions, let me know. But this is laid out pretty darn easy. So I want to walk everyone through it because I think that this is, these are some lists that definitely multiple folks should see. We've got a couple different versions of them here, sort of made some adjustments over time, but I'm going to start with the first one because I think in a lot of ways it's a little bit more relevant as we get into it here. So this is the ultimate tier list. And would you know it, up at the top, it's Dungeon Crawler Carl. I don't think a single human being who has consumed a LitRPG book or walked into a Barnes & Noble in the last 6 months would be particularly surprised to see DCC up there at the top. It is truly, for so many people, myself included, been, I think, sort of the gateway drug into the LitRPG genre for so many folks. It is kind of undisputedly up there at the top when it comes to overall rankings. I'm going to continue to go through S tier and then talk about some general findings and stuff like that. Up there as well, Mother of Learning. A series that is on my list, I haven't read yet, one that is sort of like the poster child, the golden goose of Royal Road. Really a series that so many people have praised immensely, and really has sort of, this time loop format has really, this sort of regression lit RPG was really, I think, one of the pioneers of sort of really popularizing that. In third place, not a lit RPG. I think people have combined progression fantasy and lit RPG. I wouldn't even still call the Stormlight Archives progression fantasy. I'm gonna kind of put that aside a little bit. Iron Prince is up there at the top as well. We're seeing Perfect Run, super supportive, Unsold or the Cradle series, and Mageling. Oh my goodness. So a lot of series, I mean, basically other than sort of, I think some of the more traditionally focused ones, if we want to talk about places like Royal Road, I made a whole video about how it's, if you're looking for the best new series, that's where you need to go. I think this is such a prime example. Series that really have found their home there and got famous and got popular there. And some that have finished, some that are still running, which I think is super, super cool. It's going to show that, just because a series has ended doesn't mean people are still picking it up and enjoying it. So that's super neat. I'm going to talk about the A tier a little bit here. I don't think really any surprise. It's on my Kindle. It's one of my next reads for sure, is A Soldier's Life. I've heard so many good things about this. It's such a simple, the AI generated cover and the simple text, at a glance, it's probably not a book I would necessarily pick up offhand, but so interesting. But I think one of the big ones that really jumps out at me here in the A tier is He Who Fights with Monsters. Kind of down there a little bit. So fun fact, He Who Fights with Monsters was actually the most read book on this list. Which I think when we talk about, even looking at my videos, I think my video on He Who Fights with Monsters actually has more views than my video on DCC, which is so interesting to me. It is really, I think, one of the other main starting points for folks who are getting into this. Because when I think of the prototypical lit RPG, you kind of have to think of He Who Fights with Monsters, that very classic portal fantasy or isekai story, waking up in this new world. And sort of, discovering the powers, building the party around them, the very classic Adventurers Guild kind of arc, that loop. No real surprise there at all. Now, one thing I want to point out as well is you're thinking, wait a second, Paul, you said there were 653 series. Why aren't I seeing them all on here? Well, they would only be put on this list if they had at least 10 instances. We're gonna call it some other ones here. Shout outs to Stargazer's War here. Up there in A tier in this version of the list, series that I really enjoyed. I made a video on it as well. It was sort of my introduction to cultivation fantasy and done in more of a kind of a lit RPG-esque format. Or sort of a very clear progression format, which I thought was cool. It was actually also one of the least controversial series, because I've got some other sort of cool little tidbits that Jack pulled out in this, which I thought was quite cool. Folks really, really liked it. It was one of those ones that folks consistently saying, hey, this is one that really, really liked. In terms of other least divisive series, Soldier's Life was up there, Apocalypse Parenting, and Super Supportive, along with Millennial Mage. Those are sort of the least divisive ones, which I thought was pretty interesting. So yeah, I keep sort of looking through here, sort of heading down a little bit into the B tier. Primal Hunter. Now, this is a very interesting one, the fact that it has appeared here, because fun fact, Primal Hunter, in terms of Zogarth and we think about earnings, at least on a platform like Patreon, Zogarth is from what I can gather from my research, it appears to be number one. Now Matt didn't actually above this, the program that I was using to look at this wasn't categorizing him properly, and I looked at sort of number of paid subscribers, so there is actually a chance that Matt may be technically higher on this list in terms of DCC. But at least in terms of what I could glean, just sort of looking at some of these great numbers, Primal Hunter is number one. Yet if we actually look at it in terms of where it places on this list, it's not even the top of B tier. 1% Lifesteal, which even from just my reading, a very controversial series, people akin it to torture porn, is actually still in that number one spot. Primal Hunter, I will be honest, I have not read past book number one. Apparently the writing gets much better later on. It's one of those books where I'm someone who really, like, prose matters to me. If I can't get in sort of a flow state when I read, I really struggle to sort of dive into a series. And English is not Zogarth's first language, and I think it was really evident in this first book. It's one I may go back to, but I just did not feel compelled to keep reading it. And it's interesting to note, because this version of the tier list that you're seeing on the screen is one that includes things like DNFs and really negative ratings. There is a second version of it that they'll go over at the end, where they sort of scraped out some of the DNFs and some of the more aggressive low ratings, and you'll actually see the Primal Hunter jumps up quite a bit, which again I think sort of gives a little bit of credence to this idea that people, again, it's more of one of those divisive series that people tend to love or hate. Other big series I'm not really surprised to see up here as well. Things like Beware of Chicken. One that's absolutely on my list. I've read Heretical Fishing, which is sort of in this realm. I think may have taken a bunch of inspiration from Beware of Chicken. It's definitely, again, sort of that cozy slice of life element. I'm not really surprised to see that in there as well. Path of Ascension, another one that I've read, I think the first 4 or 5 books in that series. Again, very classic, very standard stuff. And again, a very popular series in a place like Patreon. Not surprised at all to see it up here near the top of the list. But let's keep heading down, because we're starting to get into series that I am very surprised that are in some of these lower rankings. I mean, thinking just a couple here off the Quest Academy, Mark of the Fool. I mean, the fact that Mark of the Fool, given how popular, given how consistently I see it, promoted on or advocated for in places like Reddit, really surprised to see it down there. I mean, this is definitely one of those where sort of the nature of how the literal Mark of the Fool in the book interacts with the main character. I could see how it could put some people off. But that one's an interesting one for sure. One that really jumps out at me, because it's a series that I really enjoyed and actually kind of messed up in my last video talking about Forever series, because it has actually completed now, is Azeroth Healer. I think Azeroth Healer is up there with, like, if you talk about, like, bog standard, not Isekai, that is in this list, bog standard lit RPG, it's kind of up there for me. Like, it feels like, again, it's that very classic, quintessential, I'm going to get all the way OP story. But I could see there's some, again, we don't get reasons or rationales why people always put some of these books in these tier lists. But, the fact that there are some elements where it's literally like, of a 600-page book, how many pages of that are repeating stat screens and resistance trainings and stuff like that? And I think that's really where, again, some of the different elements of what makes LitRPG, especially if you read it versus listen to it, etc. Personal preference when it comes to things like heavy, crunchy stats, I think could really affect where someone puts a book like this on a tier list. Again, looking some standout ones. Stray Cat Strut, one of the most well-known, I would say, when you're thinking about sort of LitRPG progression fantasy, Stray Cat Strut comes up a ton. They're utilizing it in a video game. Max and the team over there are that's crazy to me. Like, when you think about LitRPG, that's wild. Solo leveling as well. Like, when you think about popularity, like, at least in terms of the anime, the fact that that's down there in C, Apocalypse Redux, is all the skills. I just read the first book in Ultimate Level 1. Yeah, I would maybe put it there. I mean, it was fine. It was it was fine. It was nothing special, and I don't think it deserves to be on the same tier personally as Azeroth Healer. But that's the joy of these tier lists, though. It's not just one person's opinion; these are the averages. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. I mean, we got to talk about, I think, the biggest element of the room, and that's the Wandering Inn down in D tier. Again, I think another one of these series that is incredibly divisive was actually up there on one of the top ones. Industrial Strength Magic, Tree of Aeons, Wandering Inn, Apocalypse Tamer, and Quest Academy Silver were the most divisive or divisive books on this list. And the fact that at least in this initial one with the DNFs, I mean, everybody doesn't everybody DNF Wandering Inn? Like, isn't that the idea? So maybe that's not necessarily fair to it. With Pirate Abba putting it down. I mean, again, that's a tough one, and that's why I think, again, a little bit of grain of salt in some of these. I am really surprised to see Into the Labyrinth by John Bierce down here. This is, I would definitely call it progression fantasy, not LitRPG. I did make a video about this. I adored these books. Oh my goodness, Mage Aaron. I adored this series. It's so cute, and I think maybe because it's cute, I think maybe why some folks rate it lower. It's definitely more on the YA end of things. But if you're someone who maybe isn't, especially for folks who are getting older, have kids who may be looking for Harry Potter alternatives, I think Mage Errant is a great series to recommend. I think if you're someone who has young people in their lives who are looking to get into progression fantasy, I would start them with Into the Labyrinth and Mage Errant. I think that is a phenomenal place to start. I think part of the reason we're probably seeing it down in D tier is because it's not really a classic LitRPG. Like, it is more just a YA fantasy story that has some progression elements. I think it being on this list at all is a little weird, candidly. But Defiance of the Fall, again, another one of these series where, and this is where I talked about this in Forever series, the idea of people who may have loved it at the start, and as things progress and go further in, they drop off. Even looking at the comments on these posts on Reddit, the fact that people are like, why is Iron Prince up there? The later books get awful. Interesting. If folks have only read the first book, would that impact, necessarily where they put this? Like, we look back at that list of sort of top grossing, at least when we can glean, authors, First to Fire is on there. I mean, we hold 6 of the top 10, at least on this particular list, when it comes to writing LitRPG. Like, this is, again, one of the metrics we can look at. KU reads, Audible, obviously big places where we get this stuff, but interesting. An interesting one here. Again, Battle Mage Farmer, a lot of other ones here. Mayor of Noobtown, The Grand Game. These are like, again, series that I see recommended a ton. Get down here more towards the D tier end of things. So again, this is maybe one of these examples. I mean, obviously we and maybe folks watching this video are less in this realm, but places like Book Talk, they're sort of going through a really interesting sort of situation right now where folks are realizing that, are we recommending a lot of bad books? And this is, in the context of something like a romantasy space was one thing, but this is, I think, an interesting one here too, where we always see these series recommended, but we actually think about people who, you sort of spread that out over 100 people. Are they actually necessarily that good? They're just popular. So maybe they get, the words get recycled a ton. Because again, these are a lot of books that I haven't necessarily read, but I hear a ton. So it's kind of surprising to see them down here in D tier. Heading on the way down to E. Oh my goodness. I don't get some of these. Like, I haven't read Cinnamon Bun, but like hearing what it is, like Heretical Fishing. Yeah, okay. Like, it's an enjoyable read if you're into that kind of ridiculous slice of life element. I can absolutely see how people don't like this, but I don't think that necessarily makes it a bad book. And that, I think, is really where sort of, you as the person looking at this, who's probably clicked on this video because they want to see some, hey, what should I read or what should I avoid, should be aware to do that next level of research. Because just because someone says, or a bunch of people even say, that Heretical Fishing is D tier, if you're into the kind of book that Heretical Fishing is, this very cozy slice of life, like you dropped into Stardew Valley, but also you can punch God in the face, like, if that's kind of your jam with fun little talking creatures and it's very cute and it's very whatever, like, this could be S tier for you, 100%. So it's very interesting. Again, we have to sort of, I think this is a great jumping off point. I think this is sort of one of the great things with tier lists, and we'll get to F tier at the end here. But I think using these as a jumping off point to do your own research, read blurbs, look at reviews, go on Goodreads, go on Amazon, check stuff on Royal Road. This is step one if you're looking for your next few reads. I think for sure. I think, again, any person I think could argue any one of these books, basically A through F, or S through F, could be in any one of these tiers. It really does come down to personal preference, but I think using this as a jumping off point is fantastic. Let's take a look at F tier though. Let's get down here. Hell difficulty tutorial. The fact that that's down there is honestly surprising me. The land founding, can't necessarily say I'm overly surprised, given sort of the drama around that author and the series, especially Randidly. So I asked this on Reddit and never got an answer. Is it Randidly or Randidly Ghost Town? Probably Randidly, but the fact if you could pronounce it Randidly would be even worse. Everybody would hate that. Welcome to the multiverse in F tier. Again, a series that is recommended a lot. Dissonance, like Unbound, the series. I just read that book. And again, probably not one I'll continue with, but would I necessarily rank it F tier? So very interesting. So this was with everything left in, DNFs, all the nonsense to sort of bog down some of these stats. I'm going to take a look over, we're going to flip a touch, and we're going to take a look at things that have now since been adjusted, taking out some of these lower numbers. You see everything kind of shifting up a bit when you take out some of those, like those DNFs and those really more negative reviews here. A bit of a shift up here in S tier. Still up at the top, no doubt, DCC. Mother of Learning, but now we see You Fights with Monsters come up. Perfect One, Run, Unsold. We still see Stormlight Archive. Again, some people call it progression fantasy just because as you go through the series of ideals, if you are a Knight Radiant, I still don't think that counts. Not enough characters, POV characters aren't necessary. I guess a lot of them now aren't. I mean, I guess it's slightly spoilers. There are Knights Radiant in that series. I digress. I need to read, I think maybe I need to check out Iron Prince. Again, I basically want to check out every one of these ones in S tier. If they are consistent enough across all these lists to make it into S tier, Bog Standard Isekai making it up there as well, I definitely want to check it out. One of the big things that I definitely think stands out here, Primal Hunter now coming up to the top of S tier. Don't think that really surprises anyone. Again, We Are Legion, Soldier's Life, now things like Wandering In, Beware of Chicken, Mark of the Fool, Oathbound Healer, Quest Academy, Apocalypse Parenting, again, Path of Ascension, Chrysalis. Yeah, I think, with these sort of things adjusted, at least from my experience looking at series that are constantly recommended across the board, I think you could go down into A tier. But if you are on the lookout for a LitRPG series, take a look at these ones in SS and S tier right now. I think, with all the sort of number crunching that has been done to this, I think these are probably some pretty good places to start for you to look these up, do some research and see if they're what you like. We see System Apocalypse, we see Isekai, we see, in lived world, magic system stuff. Like everything is represented here. There is something for absolutely everyone, I think, represented across these. And then I think even going into A tier as well, there's a lot of really good stuff that you're going to see represented here. So yeah, if you're someone on the lookout for your next LitRPG read, I would definitely recommend it. I'll link the whole post, but both their posts down in the description. They have access so you can go check out all the raw data for yourself as well. Again, 653 series, 100 tier lists combined to put this together. Is it the perfect data? No. But is it a great place to start? Absolutely. And I think that's definitely what a tier list should be. And there's definitely some on this list. I realized I've read a decent number, but there's still so many series I need to read. Oh my goodness. Someone who's currently writing a LitRPG, again, you gotta keep doing your homework as it was in this. So yeah, again, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, there's gonna be a lot more LitRPG content up on the channel. Because again, I'm writing one and there's gonna be some fun stuff going on with that here on the channel as well, especially if you like audiobooks. So yeah, definitely be sure to check this out. Hit that like and subscribe button. And I will see you all next time. I'm going on vacation, but there'll still be videos here on the channel. So yeah, I will see you all next time. Cheers.